You said programming it was hilarious because you're like, is party time?
Yeah. Is party time.
My variable names were very fun.
If
it was very
is party
satisfying.
time,
Yeah.
throw party.
Butterscotch.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 189 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I am a daydreamer.
I'm Sam, and I'm drawing pictures all the time.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is Brewery Force 2019.
Yeah.
It's not Fabrizuary.
No, it's Brewery.
Brewery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Before we started, we have a warning. There's going to be profanity. All right, let's get started.
That was good. Sneak that one in there real fast.
We'd like to thank our supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net for keeping our microphones piping hot via funneling, laundering money right into our offshore bank accounts.
We keep it real clean.
Super
And
helpful.
we use the heat from all of those, those laundry dryer machines to keep our place warm.
Yep, that's right. That's how money is laundered.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about life. The Super Bowl.
The Superb Owl.
The Super Battle.
The big game. I think you're not allowed to say it. Whoops.
The big game?
Yeah, they've got all kinds of trademark bullshit on it. And if you use the word,
Is it kind of like the Happy Birthday song where for like 100 years you couldn't sing it in a TV show or on the radio?
Maybe.
Is that true?
This is
until
what,
like 2 years
Yeah.
ago.
Why would you do that?
So this is what
Of all things.
Money grabbing.
Well, whose money are you grabbing? You're not grabbing anybody's money. You're just stopping people from singing Happy Birthday.
Yeah, you're preventing kids from being able to sing Happy Birthday.
Well, I guess it's an honorable cause.
Yeah,
You know?
And actually, it literally was illegal every time you sang Happy Birthday.
Yeah, so we might need to have a Fat Bart go back and bleep out that I didn't say the. So this is why people call it the big game whenever they're talking about it elsewhere, because you can't actually use the name of it. It's like a Voldemort.
You can also call it the Superb Owl.
the Superb Owl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What should have space in there?
Which
Boom.
honestly, if there was a competing TV show called
there's
The
just
Superb
a
Owl,
dope-ass-
just about owls,
Just
oh my
owls
God.
doing awesome shit.
I would watch the fuck out of that.
So I would too, because I watched the big game this year, and it was just medium all around.
Well, I think
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom. The
Left to
commercials, nothing happened.
Yep.
Nothing particularly good. Very uninspired. This was, I believe, somebody can correct me on this, but I believe this was the lowest scoring Super Bowl game of all time.
yes.
Really?
There was-
Yeah.
Of
there
all
were-
time?
Yes.
There were no touchdowns scored until
The last, 4
the
minutes.
last quarter.
And then
What?
one.
And then just one.
It was 2 field goals around
What
halftime.
were the teams?
It was the Patriots, which are from New England, and nobody knows where specifically. They just
It's
roam
just all of
around.
New England.
They just
The whole
nomadically
place.
roam around in the Northeast, playing in
Sort of
random
marauding.
That's
fields.
why they're so powerful. They have such a large region to pull from.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfair.
And then it was the Los
Rams.
Angeles Rams, formerly the St. Louis Rams.
Wasn't that just last year they were the St. Louis Rams? Or was that 2
That was
years ago?
2015?
Oh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
Maybe
shit. 4 years ago.
Really? It was that long ago? Yeah.
There was a big controversy here. And so here in St. Louis, this was a big deal because apparently people are supposed to be mad about the Patriots for a bunch of reasons, and people are also supposed to be mad about the Rams for a bunch of other reasons.
Mostly because they left St. Louis.
Yeah.
Right. I found,
Actually, what they because I remember this. What they did was they said the city, all the taxpayers of St. Louis need to funnel a fuck ton of money into a new stadium because this stadium is not good enough for us.
Yes.
And then the taxpayers,
Everyone said, you haven't won anything.
the taxpayers said no.
taxpayers were like, "What about homeless people? What about all these other
Actually,
things?"
no, that's
that
not
we
what
can
any of
do?"
them said because the
it was-
taxpayers don't give a fuck about anything.
No, it
that's
was
true.
How about you win some games? That was actually it was like you guys haven't invested in yourselves. Your coach sucks, like all this stuff.
Yeah,
and then
you suck.
And then they were like, fine. And then they moved to LA. They got rid of their coach, got a new coach, and now they're doing good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but
But they moved to LA with like the 100 other teams that are based there.
They're doing so well that they just lost the lowest scoring Super Bowl game of all time.
Yeah.
So that happened.
it did happen.
I would say it serves them right, but I'm actually glad they left because I don't like how much money.
It does cost a lot of
I
money.
don't
for some reason.
like the whole taxpayer to sports team relationship
Yeah,
thing,
very
and
strange.
I would
And
like to have
since-
as little of that as possible.
And since they've left, the startup community has really blossomed.
That's
here
true,
in
actually.
St. Louis. A lot of money is going into new business ventures.
Coincidence?
and- I don't know.
Probably not.
Correlation equals
now-
causation.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what
now
we
like the in the top 5 food scenes in the country.
Yep.
A lot
in
of great
St. Louis.
restaurants now.
Yeah.
We've got a great new tech district that's popping up with all kinds of cool businesses.
Yeah.
and
So
stuff.
you know what, LA, keep keep your
Keep
fucking
'em.
sports
Keep
teams.
your
In
samples.
fact, poach more of them.
Yeah, the bowl itself was really boring because of this
The
lack
owl.
of the
Basically, they would
owl.
just kind of like wiggle the ball around and then
And then
punt
kick
it.
it, yeah.
Wiggle the ball
They
around,
had, like,
punt it.
There were 9 punts.
That was actually the longest punt in Super Bowl history. It was
Oh,
like
I hope
65
so.
That's one of the
yards or
most
something.
boring sentences I've ever heard
It
in
is.
my life.
It was ridiculous. Yeah,
It was a
And they're-
long, we got a long
They
punt.
kicked the ball real far because they couldn't do anything with it.
My
Yeah.
favorite part was my wife and I had a couple people come over, and we told them like, oh yeah, we'll be ready around 4:30, but just come before the game starts. And so Diana made just a mountain of fries out of, like, she cuts up potato wedges essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're so delicious. So she finished these.
So
They
you
came
both
out.
ate them all.
Well, they came out at like 4:40. So we were already like, okay, well, no one's here, so I guess we'll
Just kind of snack.
we'll just kind of nibble a little bit and watching the pregame stuff. And then before everyone got there around like 5:15, but before everybody got there, we had just decimated. This was like 8 potatoes. We had eaten like half of it before everyone arrived, and then just sort of looked at each other. We were like giggling the whole time because we're like, we know we shouldn't be consuming all the food that we've made for our guests.
You know,
But-
Sam, I came in the office this morning. I was like, something seems off about Sam. He seems
Huger than
he's got the aura of a man who ate 4 potatoes.
I was feeling very powerful. What can I say? The root vegetable.
Partake of the soul of the potato.
Yeah, they got good soul.
It's a root vegetable. Root has a very powerful connotation in computer science.
Connects you to the earth, connects you to the root directory.
It
where
gives
can
you
destroy
all the
everything.
power. Yeah.
And dirt.
And
There's dirt down there.
Yeah.
All the good stuff.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Adam's full sleeve tattoo that he got.
Surprise.
Last week.
After last podcast episode which was we recorded on a Monday.
And Adam's like, peace, I'm getting the tat. And then he's gone.
Although I was here for the whole workday first.
Right, other side from that.
Until
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
So then I took off and I got a tattoo. I just told I found the artist in St. Louis based on Instagram who I was like, I think this is the best one,
Mhm.
which it's only based on whatever I see on Instagram. So that who knows if that's
Who knows,
true
yeah.
because that's not how reality
He
works.
did do a good job.
But he was super good, and it took me 9 months to get in to see him. So I think it was worth it. But yeah, he got me a rad phoenix tattoo that sort of covers my whole upper arm and goes down onto my forearm and comes up onto my shoulder.
It's
So
big.
It's pretty big.
Big
I would
rad.
put pictures in the chat, but it's only an outline now because I got to fill it in on another session.
It needs a glowing red demon eye.
I need some cool shit in
and
there.
then it's
so,
done.
Yeah. So after it gets filled in at the end of February and then heals up because it'll be probably a bloody, itchy, horrible mess,
So what's the
then I will put some pictures out.
story?
So the phoenix has become sort of a family symbol because largely because of Sam trying to die. And then somehow the phoenix is like the whole like rebirth thing, and there was some like imagery
It
involved.
started with Dad, actually.
Did Dad start it?
And the dragon was my addition.
the dragon was
to
your
it.
thing, okay,
Yeah. And so, yeah, it has become a weird sort of family.
Yeah,
symbol in some
and then it was
ways.
also it was the mascot of my school for undergrad where I met my wife,
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
so it's got some connotations there.
Interesting.
And
The Phoenix? That's a dope ass mascot.
yeah, the one that we have though is like the old Middle Ages
Oh,
thing where its wings are like holding the book open or
and
something.
then its
you know?
legs are in weird contorted sort of angles where it's like
Wait, its
holding
wings-
a leaf or
It's
something.
holding
like-
a book up. It's a bird of fire.
But it's like a bird. Yeah,
you
but
shouldn't
it's,
put that in your books.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's some kind of weirdness there. I don't know. So it wasn't a great logo or mascot. And actually, our mascot what was our fucking mascot. Our mascot was the Maroons. Like that was what our teams were called.
Like you're stranded on an
on
island.
the Maroons. Yeah,
We're lost.
As in, it
I
was
don't
literally it was just the color. Like the color was
Is it
our
color.
So I don't really understand how like mascots and things work because the school's sort of crest was this kind of weird but still kind of rad,
Flaming
like old timey
bird.
phoenix.
Mhm.
Less flamey than just old timey, but
Mhm.
all about learning, right?
Oh, you
And
know what
then-
it was.
And then our teams things were all about a color, which I think is actually for my school was an appropriate kind of thing too, because they were like learning is awesome, just like the phoenix, and sports
Maroon.
is whatever it is. We'll just-
We're going to give this the
give
lowest
it to-
amount of thought
Yeah,
possible.
right.
Maybe they were going to call their sports team the Phoenixes, but it just doesn't
doesn't,
pluralize
yeah.
very well.
I
and
think
they were
it's- I
like,
think it's Feenies.
yeah, the
I think it's
Feenies.
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 Mhm.
They're like, that's not good. We're
Yeah,
not. We're not
You get
intimidating
attacked by a
anybody.
flock of Feenies.
Yeah.
Feenies.
Yeah. So then I guess Dad got his Phoenix tattoo.
It was a long time ago.
Did both dads get it at the same time, or did Dad get it first?
I think Dad got it and then Kevin got it.
Okay.
and- yeah.
So our dads got Phoenix
They were
tattoos
very close
years
together,
ago now,
yeah.
so close together. And I was like, oh, that's pretty fun. That's cool that we now have that. Now a tradition has been born. And then I realized that kind of like tied to life in other kinds of interesting ways.
Also, your wedding cake.
Our wedding cake
had
had a phoenix on it. So I wanted to have that done because I just wanted something really awesome. So I didn't want to have to put a lot of like effort into thinking about it. I just wanted to be able to walk in and say, here's a cool thing that doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot because nobody knows what a phoenix looks like because it's mythical, right? And I just said I want one that's not steeped in any tradition. So just one that looks more hawk-like than probably anything else, and just looks cool because that gives somebody a lot to work with where they're trying to make one thing, not trying to tie a lot of stuff in,
right,
where they can just kind of like go to town on it, which is that want to happen. So that's pretty rad.
I like the idea of
about it.
Family tattoo.
Yeah,
you don't hear about that very often.
No,
People are always like, "Oh, this is my grandmother's ring." It's like, well, this is my grandmother's phoenix tattoo. That I also have now.
Yeah, well, so I figured because the dads have it and now I have it, and so that I'm sort of like easing the transition into everybody else also getting it.
I'll get one.
So
I'm down.
Now Sam has to get one.
Now I gotta
Seth
get one. And we all gotta get them.
Seth still has to get those laser eyes though. You're a little behind on that.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, you'll be that.
I guess I'm catching up.
Yeah, you can't see your tattoos if you don't have laser eyes. So then what's the point?
That's true. Because when I look, I can't turn my head that far, and then it's outside the window.
It's outside the periph.
Outside the periph there.
Yeah.
I can only see clearly in a small rectangular area in the middle of my
damn
vision.
glasses.
Yeah. I do hate how if I'm trying to look at something in any angle, I need to basically turn my head like an owl. Like I have to be pointing my face at it. Otherwise you can't see it. It's just a blur fest.
Yeah.
All right. Let's also talk about Sam's dog, Tiny Legs.
Yep.
That's
all you need to know.
That's the dog's name.
So
right? Tiny Legs.
So Yogurt, my wife and I's dog, and Diana took him for a run yesterday. It's been beautiful in St. Louis after being, -6 degrees, whatever the hell it was, last week. 60 degrees over the weekend. And so she took the dog for a run. And of course, he's covered in fur currently. And it's like a big sort of bushy mass.
He gets real
plumped up
Yeah.
from all of his fur. And so to go for a run, his legs get dirty. So I come upstairs and see Diana with a pitcher in the tub washing the dog, but only washing his legs. And because he's so fluffy up top, and she hadn't put any water on him, and then just had watered his legs, they became these sticks that like it was of such comical proportion that it was just like popsicle stick leg dog with like a big fat.
So it's kind of like maybe how a child would draw a sheep. Like a ball with like little stick legs.
It was exactly like that.
Poking out.
And then even after we dried them off, they were still...
hadn't floofed out
They
yet.
still had totally floofed out. And then finally, my wife was like, before the people came over, it had been another hour or so, and she looked at him and kind of giggled a bit, and she's like, you gotta go take him back upstairs and blow dry his legs. Because like we cannot introduce him to people with this creepy...
This is our weird, creepy stick leg dog. He is real heavy on top, light on the bottom, sort of a mullet situation.
It was ridiculous, but it was so comical to look at. So it was just a joy.
Dogs, man, they bring a lot. They bring a lot to the table.
They mostly bring their stupidity.
Yes, it's the best.
Yeah.
They make us all feel pretty good about what we got going on.
Delightful stupidity.
All right,
also there's something about just animal dumbness that is just
it's wonderful.
It is such a joy.
But they're also they're just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where a lot of their dumbness is. Like, it doesn't matter what happens, they're just happy, just constantly.
Yep. They got nothing going on. They got no problems. All right, let's talk about podcast.bscotch.net, which is up and running.
New and shiny.
The new podcast page, which we've been talking about for years.
1,000 years.
Adam did it, and it's published. It's live.
Yeah.
It's ready to go.
Yeah. So last week we said it was in beta and told you had to go to like some weird beta website to actually see it. And then a bunch of you did, which was awesome. And we already have, I think, like 30 questions that people have put in there. So, so y'all did a great job of just seeing if it worked, because it seems to, at least well enough that we could burn the other one down. So, so that's gonna be one of my first tasks this week, is to redirect all the addresses, burn down the old one, and just
and it will be reborn like a phoenix.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
We'll just tell that fucker goodbye.
And as part of the podcast thing, we thought, how do we get our Discord community more involved in the podcast? Maybe through some juice box magic. So what have we done?
So we decided to make a party throwing, I guess, just a a podcast listening party event that Juicebox would throw. So I wrapped that up at the end of the week and got it out and running, which is basically on an arbitrary schedule that we can just, settle on. Then a command comes through the pipes and tells Juicebox, hey, it's time to throw a party. Mm-hmm. And so
you said programming it was hilarious because you're like, is party time?
Yeah.
Is party time.
My variable names were very fun.
If
it was very
is party time.
Yeah.
Throw party.
Yeah. It was so I added it so that before he comes in, he gives you a 30-minute heads up, and he's like, "Hey, here's the episode we're going to play, blah blah." And then at 10 minutes before, he then gives you another thing where he's like, "Hey, just a reminder, it's coming up in 10 minutes. Here's the description of this episode, so you kind of know what you're getting into." Mm-hmm. And there's a 3-minute heads up. It's like, go put your headphones on and go over the fucking channel so you can hear it. And then finally, he just tells you that it's in. So I currently have it scheduled for because we have a time zone problem, right? So I was like, I want to make sure that people, if they want to participate in this thing, have the opportunity to. But now we're in this weird spot where the more it happens, the less anybody gives a shit.
Yes. Right. It's not special if it's happening all the time.
But the less it happens, the fewer people who possibly could participate because people have work and people are in different time zones. And so you take those two things together, and for any given hour of the day, some tiny fraction of people can actually, even if they wanted to, even do this. Which I didn't really think about this until I'd already made this thing. And then I was like, I'm not even sure this is going to work. I think it'll work once we have a lot of people in that.
In that chat. To me, it was kind of it's a future proofing thing.
Yeah. I think it'll be useful once Levelhead goes live and we're driving people into the podcast.
So one thing we'll need to, after we had this thing up and running, it's clear that we just have way too many podcasts.
There are two parts. He says too many things in the chat.
Yeah, four announcements is just too many.
Yeah, he should just give you the 30-minute heads up and then tell you it started.
Yeah.
That's it. And 4 times a day, because I'm doing it every 6 hours, so I figured that was a good spread, to kind of hit all the time zones and stuff.
Well, it's 4 times a day, and also he plays random episodes.
Yeah,
and so we'll need to kind of figure out what do people want to hear and when do they want to hear it, and how do we kind of, because we only like you said, we only want to do the minimum so that it's a special thing that people sort of come together to listen to.
Yeah, well, on the day of the podcast, he plays the new one.
Yeah,
right? But then outside of that, what should you be doing? And I figure, because if somebody just wants to listen to all of them, then that's what listening tools are for, right? Either podcast.bscotch.net, because that thing actually lets you just binge them if you want to.
Yeah,
or you're just with or your app. But if you want to listen with a group, what are you trying to accomplish there? Because people are going to be coming in that'll be new to the whole system at any given moment. Most people who get into the podcast will actually just go listen to it on their own anyway. And so to me, the purpose of these sort of of these listening parties is to introduce the new episode is a very obvious one.
Yep.
Or to play things that people otherwise wouldn't have heard or have heard, but now get the chance to listen to with other people. Right. And so to me, that's where it makes sense to have a random episode, but just maybe not that frequency.
Yeah. On podcast day, we do the new one, and then
maybe on the weekend.
On Saturday or Sunday, we do some other, basically just random draw.
Yeah, and then we could do 2 a day on the weekends or something.
Just to back it up to make sure people understand, Juicebox actually streams the audio into
Discord.
The Discord.
So he goes into one of the voice channels and he just
so people can all listen simultaneously and then chat about it, which is super fun.
Yeah. And I think the intent behind it was basically to just say, instead of people just listening by themselves, they can listen with other people and then talk about what's going on in the episode and stuff like that. So there's some kinks we're working out. It's a little too much.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it was mostly I wanted to just have it done and out over the weekend so I could just kind of see what would happen so that we could then, because it's all about the DevOps way: small batch, deliver it, get some iteration in so you can get a sense of what's going on.
It's not going to be perfect first time.
Turns out first try you just partied too much.
Way too much
partied too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's true of life. When you first get started, you're just partying way too much.
You get to college, you're free for the first time, party way too much, learn way too little, and then you go off in the world not knowing how to do anything because you spent so much time partying, and then you still just party too much.
Probably, yeah.
You're like, we got to take this, and you're like, we got to take this down to Wednesday mornings and weekends. That's that's when we're gonna party.
Yeah, the Juicebox way.
Yes. All right, I want to talk about Notion. I got a Notion. Notion.so.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a top level
Notion.so. I don't know why it's that.
Probably because they really wanted the word Notion, and so they had to find the one remaining top level domain that wasn't taken.
So what is this thing? It's a web tool that sort of supplants everything.
Or rather, it eats everything.
Yeah,
I think it's it.
Because you can also import from all the other.
Yeah, so we're using it essentially as a knowledge repository for the studio, where you can put documentation, you can put sort of next pieces of a project that need to be ironed out, that sort of thing. basically things that don't make sense to put in Trello. And also that might be institutional knowledge for the studio. We found this tool and just started kind of putting stuff in it. But the crazy thing about it is that it can put,
you could use it as a Trello board.
yeah, I'm not sure even how to talk about it. It's like if you're used to something like Google Docs, right? For you to make a new file or Microsoft Office Word or whatever else, you have to choose the format of the file, right? You have to say, okay, I'm making a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, making a PowerPoint or making a Word document.
Right,
or
I'm opening up this program to do that, and it only does this suite of things. Notion is super weird because you can just drop in basically any kind of thing anywhere. So you can be typing.
You can make a document and then just be like, I want to put a database in here, and you're like plop
boom.
in a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet behaves like a Airtable database,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, or you'll be like, I want a calendar here. And then you
Yeah.
put the calendar there, and it's a fully interactive calendar. And then you'd be like, I want to also link to a list view of all of the events happening in this calendar. And then you can embed that.
And then you're like, wait a second, I actually want to put a whole bunch of calendars inside of a table.
In a different calendar. I want to put a calendar in this calendar, and then in that calendar
Yeah.
have a table full of calendars.
Yeah.
You can literally do that.
And it's so, all of us have been looking at
it's
it.
very mind bending.
We can't figure out how they built it.
Well,
Because
it's basically, they just have the idea that like everything is completely modular and that data is data.
Well, they call everything a node, right? So everything everything is just a node in a big graph where like things are nested, and that's how it behaves. But somehow they figured out a way to do that.
Yeah. And really, if you think about like a calendar or a list or a table or whatever, these are all just ways of viewing information, right?
Mhm.
And so their approach is basically like a document is just a database that is a
Formatted
column of
in some way.
paragraphs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know, every entry in the database is a paragraph of text. And you should be able to just like, for example, one of the things you can't do in typical word processing is just grab a paragraph and put it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be like, oh,
You
I'm
gotta
select
cut it,
it,
paste
copy. Yeah. In Notion, you can just do that. You just fucking move it, right? Or like we said, insert a calendar in between paragraphs or add a Kanban board into your Word document. So you can do all of this stuff.
It's so strange.
So we've been playing around with this thing.
Yeah, I found
It was
there was
great.
an article that was actually worth looking into for people in general by the CodePen team. So CodePen is that fun. They basically they do a whole bunch of stuff for web related development, but their big thing is they have a place where you can set up a pen, is what they call it. But it's this idea where you can write up some code that is now publicly visible. You can just share it with somebody else that shows you the outcome of that code in another panel.
You can also edit it too.
You can edit it too and see like the live, but it's like really deep. So normally you couldn't just go on a website and be like, I want to see how Vue works. So Vue is an entire framework, right? But you can go into CodePen and you can be like, load Vue, and you just like tell it that's a prereq, and then you start typing Vue commands, and all of a sudden you can see the result. So it's this really cool thing that they've done, but it's very like fancy web tech. And they wrote an article. I think their team is like 18 people or something. It's not very big. And there was this big article in Medium that was all of the web tools that we pay for, or all the things we subscribe to, or whatever, right? And so I was going through this list because I was like, this is super useful for me as the one person in our shop running web tech, where I have no idea like what other people out in the world are doing. Because it also they told the costs of everything, like, and what they use all the things for. And so, for example, they said like $18,000 in AWS servers every month, and I was like, fuck,
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Hopefully we do not end up at that point. But of course, we're not doing things like they're doing. But then I could see kinds of like what scale means, right?
Yeah.
So it's still useful there. And then one of the tools they had like halfway down was this Notion thing that they mentioned. They said, oh yeah, we've started to use this more and more for just our internal documentation of stuff. And so I opened it up to check it out, and immediately was like, I could see there was just so much.
It's
under the
weird.
surface of that I kind of actually just like left immediately because I didn't want to.
They do have some templates and stuff, but otherwise,
They do,
it's actually interesting. They have, to me, they have the least number of sort of tutorials and help things. That I've
But
actually.
it's all pretty
seen.
intuitive.
It's pretty intuitive.
It's fairly intuitive, but there's something that makes it because you can just do anything. There's sort of a paralysis you get.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like,
Am I doing it
am
right?
I doing it right?
Yeah.
But they do a bunch of those templates that you can basically just start with and then drop in. It's like we use one of those for our sort of studio dashboard thing, which keeps track of 401k and all that other stuff. We just sort of grabbed one. We haven't filled it out yet, but now there's just a structure that's already there.
But it was so easy. Like, so once we actually started to play with it and get over that hump of the sort of the paralysis where you're just like, fuck, I don't know how to start. Once you start, it's just so easy to manipulate stuff in there that it becomes unimportant.
Well,
that
so you guys
don't
also
know how to do
added
it.
custom icons to stuff. So we have like our studio icons are like some of the little icons next to pages and things.
Yeah, and they also and they did a good job. It's very, I mean, it's just very, like future web 2.0 kind of
crazy.
Because like if you put an icon as the main icon on a page and then you load that page directly, then now that changes the favorite icon in your browser. And like they do the whole,
which did make me confused for a while.
Yeah,
because
I know.
I couldn't tell where the Notion tab was because the icon of the
It's
tab on
shifting.
Chrome changes depending on what page you're looking at.
But yeah, it's just some of that super dynamic, single page web app stuff that very, very modern websites are starting to do, but they're just like, they're really,
Is this web?
really
Is this
doing it.
Web 3.0? Is that what this is?
I guess, I don't
It's
know.
something else.
Where they're just
honestly.
just whatever, guys.
real
fun.
Data's data. Just do shit
Yeah,
with
it doesn't matter.
It's crazy.
Although one of my
3.0.
favorite parts of it is, so they don't have an open API yet, which is the only thing that makes
only beef.
that to me is a bummer. Though supposedly it's on the roadmap and they're working on it. But I love, so they're already doing this like fancy stuff, right? Presumably just like a normal RESTful API, I would imagine. But then they were like, well, let's not stop there. Let's also do real time like WebSocket stuff where things are just like you're directly communicating back and forth between the server all the time, so that if Sam and Seth are looking at the same document, we can just show their little head icons next to the line that their mouse is on, right? So that you can then go in and you're like, okay, well, so you share a document with somebody, and then you open it up. And then you just see people's heads like moving up and down on the side of this document.
And then it also shows
awesome.
like at the top, it'll show the heads, the little avatars of all the people who have looked at that document before. Every document has full revision history of all kinds.
You can add comments on anything.
You can add comments and assign things to people and like resolve
One of
discussions.
the things is like as soon as you, because there's some layers of this where it's just like, okay, you treat data arbitrarily and you let stuff nest arbitrarily and you set up for some rules about how it's presented. Like that would be very hard to do, but I get it conceptually. I can kind of see ways that I might do it. But then as soon as you start adding in, also infinite revisions, which is one of the hardest things in the universe to deal with, then the moment you add in something like that, I'm like, fuck, I don't know. I don't know how
this
I can't even get it.
Yeah, it's an impressive piece of software.
It's really cool.
And so yeah, if you're looking for something to kind of, in our case, handle internal documentation, or really just kind of keep your notes together, might be something good to check
It's also
out.
markdown friendly, which is to me super, super important.
So it's Notion.sh.
And it has dark mode, which
And it
is
has dark
even
mode.
more important than anything else in the world.
But it does not sync that across your devices. So on every device you boot it up on, you have to set it
You will be blind for
temporarily.
about a minute. So
Yeah, it's pretty
Notion,
bad, though.
Notion.so.
And if
Check
anybody
it
from
out.
Notion is listening, please implement that API ASAP so we can.
And you can just mail
Play
the
more.
sponsorship money,
whatever
over
Give
to
you a
us,
chance.
whenever's convenient for you. All right, last bit of discussion before we hit questions is the Epic Store. Let's talk about it.
Things still cruising.
Bunch more games are bailing on Steam, becoming exclusives on the Epic Store.
So this happened last week, I believe, I'm pretty sure, which
the
was
Metro.
Metro.
Yep.
So Metro Exodus, which is a big, basically a AAA title that is kind of like the Fallout series in terms of, you shoot stuff, it's in a wasteland, that sort of thing. Very different vibe, but
Very sort of
It's about,
very kind of innovative, groundbreaking sort of a setting
yeah.
never seen before.
But they have their next huge game coming out. It's called Metro Exodus, and this is a pretty popular franchise that I think has just been on Steam. I don't know if it's on Xbox and stuff too.
I
Maybe
think
it
it's
is.
on console.
It might be on
I think
console,
it
too.
is.
So it's got a pretty big fan base, and they had been doing pre-orders through Steam, and then so in other words, they've collected some number of sales already. through
There's really quite a
Steam.
few because I mean, it's like any of those AAA games that are popular sell a lot of pre-orders.
And so they were doing that, and then they just announced last week, oh, actually, we're not going to launch on Steam. We're just launching on the Epic Store. Well, of course, we will honor your purchase.
Yeah, so they'll still deliver it to you on Steam if you've pre-ordered it,
but they're not selling it to anybody else.
Well, no, I think they'll deliver it. Is it on Steam?
Still on Steam, yeah.
Okay.
Which is so far what all the companies that have abandoned Steam have done is they've said, if people have already bought the game there, then they'll say, we'll still publish the game here, through to you, right? Because you'll still get a key and the whole thing. We just won't be selling any additional copies. Basically.
Interesting. Yeah, so they basically moved to Epic.
Well, and they dropped the price by $10.
By $10. So it went from a $60 game to a $50 game.
Yeah,
So
which on the one hand I could totally get because they're basically saying like, hey, and this is probably a deal they had with Epic, I imagine, but they're saying, hey, like Epic's cut with us because it's so much less than on Steam. We could knock the price of the game down a lot
and still make
still
more
make
money.
and still make more money.
Yeah.
And so they're passing that on to their customer base, which is
Except
a cool move, but except for all those people who fucking pre-ordered it on Steam for $60.
I think it does ease the to me, it does ease the edge for people who are looking forward to buying it and haven't bought it yet.
Yeah, because now, and I think that's probably part of it
cheaper,
too, right? Yeah, right. Because nobody actually passes the savings on to the customer. Nobody fucking does that. But it's a really good it's a really good thing to signal to people to sort of like claim that that's what you're doing. Yeah. But especially if you're gonna basically going to abandon your player base in one context and try to migrate them somewhere else, if you can give, because if all they did was just move and that was it, that would be a significantly larger uproar than the uproar that they already got. Yeah. But the weird thing was, even though, like, to me, that was a big deal that they knocked the price down that much.
Yeah, that's
but
crazy.
Nobody was talking about it. Like, I saw a lot of players ranting, like a lot of it,
just about the fact that they moved.
But I didn't see any of those players at all even reference the fact that it was going to be cheaper.
What's so interesting about this, there's a really good breakdown of this all this sort of like the exclusives things are going on between Epic and Steam and on games industry. And the point that the guy made, which I thought was fantastic, was that all of the sort of, rattling about the exclusives hurting consumers makes perfect sense if you're talking about consoles.
Yeah, because you have to buy a whole console.
You have to buy a $400 to $500 piece of hardware in order to play the damn game. But when you're talking about a launcher that is free, that is actually not true anymore. Yeah. It is actually just not true. And so this whole like, they moved it. It's like, fuck them. Like,
you can freely download the Epic launcher at any time.
It costs you literally nothing. Yeah. And so that, which is still a big part of the thing that people are screaming about.
Well, in this case, it costs you negative $10 because you're
but I think this was the problem is like from a business perspective, that's totally true, right?
Yeah.
But when you're a player who's like super invested in a platform and you have to like the thing is like you don't get to just be invested in a platform. You have to do it by also being sort of invested in other platforms, right? But if you look at the amount of hate people have for the Epic Game Store, like that's actually and Epic is actually sort of feeding it by doing this exclusives thing because again, like from a business perspective and from a rational perspective, you're right, it doesn't actually matter, right? But from the player perspective, where if Epic came out and did some different stuff entirely, like approach things really differently, they could be building goodwill with a community and potentially instead, right? But that probably wouldn't be sufficient to move players over.
That's what Discord did.
Right? It's just not sufficient. So they kind of had to do it this way. It just is what it is. But players, they just don't see it that way. And also because players are, they get into these, they start to
get in your camp.
They start to foment, and they hang out with each other and talk about the same talking points over and over again. And so what happened very quickly, because I was checking out like Reddit threads over the weekend to kind of see what people were saying about this.
Well, there's your first mistake, but
but it is like, but not because I wanted to participate, because I wanted to see what people were talking about, right? And the thing that basically became common knowledge amongst all the people who are pissed off about this, because they want reasons to be pissed, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't like it, but now they're looking for reasons to be angry about it. Because by default, there's nothing to be really angry about. But if you can find some reasons, now you can start to sort of feed on that. And so they did very quickly because Tencent owns 40% of Epic, right? Yep. And people are very upset by this because now, of course, they're like, I don't want to have to give up my personal information to a company that's partially owned by basically the Chinese government, right? It's sort of like
that's where they want.
That's the place they want to take it, right? Because again, they need a reason to be.
Do they have League of Legends accounts? Probably
a lot of them. Yeah.
Do they go to AMC theaters?
Probably.
Buddy, that ship sailed a long time ago.
This isn't about being rational, right? This is about needing to.
Well, this is about saying like, I've got my Steam library, I'm invested, I've been on that platform for a long time.
And someone's providing an inconvenience. It's a change. People don't like change. That's fine, right? And I also I get the knee jerk response to stuff too, because now there's just like a slightly inconvenient thing you have to do, and my default response also is to be like, well, that's annoying that I have to take
4 minutes to do a new thing.
Or I don't have to like switch which launchers are open or whatever. Yeah, because that's not what it's about for people, right? It's about convenience. It's about being part of a tribe and all that. So actually, I totally understand this response that's happening because the problem is if you're a business person like looking for like, but we didn't even do anything like that actually impacts people in a negative way. That's true from a business and financial perspective,
it's not
right?
An emotional truth,
but it's not true from the emotional truth at all. And when you are making an emotional product, which is what entertainment products are, then
people get emotional.
People get emotional about it, and you don't get to just say like, this doesn't make any sense how you're responding. You don't get to do that.
So I do say my favorite thing is that they are review bombing Metro and Steam.
Yeah, the review bombing Metro, all the other Metro games on Steam,
which is very amusing because this is
part of the reason that people want to leave Steam.
Yeah, part of the reason devs want to leave because they're like, this has nothing to do with the quality of the game. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Especially the past 2 games that are already out.
So we actually got review bombed on Steam as well.
Yep.
When we released Crashlands in China, we did not have the Chinese translation on Steam. It was only available on the Chinese platform that we launched on WeGame. And there were a number of Chinese players on Steam who had already bought the game. And then they were upset that they would, in order to get the Chinese translation, they would have to go get it on this other platform. Yeah. And so they expressed themselves in the only way that Steam lets them, which is give us a huge number of thumbs down.
Yeah.
So,
which ended up being
our sales dramatically for
a month,
2 weeks.
Or something like that. But it was actually something that we needed. Like we needed to know that we had a Chinese player base on Steam who really wanted that Chinese translation. Because we didn't. There was actually no way for us to really know that otherwise, right?
Yeah,
so
but it certainly could have happened without nuking our income from more of a
Well, I mean, maybe, right? If there was some but what other method could there have been, right?
Yeah, this is the only one that was available.
So like, as frustrated as I was at the time that was happening, like I also completely got it. Like, because we fucked over our players in that context, right?
Well,
and
also
not willfully, but it was actually because of the deal that we had with WeGame, which is that they owned the translation, right? And and I think I think there's this idea, this whole rational consumer thing. I mean, you just have to throw that fucking thing out the window because it has never been true in any context anyway. But especially when you have products that drive people emotionally, you got to be.
Well, no, I think people are acting rationally
not in the
under
economic sense. Right.
Well, they're acting under the constraints of whatever the system is that they're operating in.
Yeah.
So in the case of the Epic launcher, people are emotionally invested in this previous platform. Changing to a new platform means to them now having this sort of annoying thing of like running 2 clients, having 2 chat programs, 2 separate friends lists, 2 separate libraries.
Well, the thing too is, it's actually not even as simple as just you have this separate thing you have to go launch now. It's like, well, now a weird subset of your friends are on it.
Yeah.
And they all have different names probably now. And so there's actually a whole bunch of
it's just annoying
stuff that gets,
it's just annoying and people
and it's constantly annoying. It's not just, I have another launcher now.
Yeah. It's not like you're going to move from Steam to Epic. You're just going to now also be on both. And then if you throw things like Discord and maybe Slack and all these other things, like other ways that people communicate with their gaming friends, it quickly becomes a full-time job trying to keep up with all the shit that's going on. And so then, of course, people are already annoyed at the inconvenience. And then, like you said, once people are already annoyed, they come together on the internet and feed each other's.
Yeah, right. They look for validation of their anger.
Yeah. Right? And they find it, of course, because the internet
easy to find.
The internet has plenty of that. And then they funnel that through the one means that they have of sort of sticking it to the developer for putting them in that situation, which is the thumbs down on the Steam or whatever. So I mean, people are doing kind of exactly what you would expect them to do.
It's just
Well, there's been an interesting thing as far as the design of Levelhead goes, because there's basically anything you give players in a multiplayer context can and will be weaponized. And so we have to try to do these thought experiments to say, okay, like what if you don't like someone? Or what if the internet says, oh, this creator sucks? And then how could the entire or like a large group of people essentially nuke that person's ability to publish and like get their level seen by people? Is that possible? How can we make that not possible? What are the other mechanisms?
Or at least minimize the consequences of all these things.
So it's been it's one of my least favorite things to think about because it is so annoying
it's simultaneously very understandable and just it makes our lives really difficult as designers and developers.
I mean, I just read an article over the weekend about a new policy that was implemented in World of Warcraft last week. It was a hidden policy that wasn't really announced, but people quickly figured it out. Which is if you report a player, and 4 other people also report that player in a short time span, that player immediately gets suspended from the game.
Oh God!
And so it takes 5 reports. Guess how many people you can queue up for most game content with? 5, right? And so now in competitive PvP, which is like a 10 versus 10, people have figured out the strategy to win is everybody report the other team's healer.
Oh my God.
And then they get suspended for 30 days and then they have to
their account gets suspended for 30
days? They get immediately
days?
Logged off of the game. They get suspended and then they have to like go in for review.
You even report you can't even understand the other team's chat.
You can report them for things like win trading and stuff like that. So they have this. Apparently, this has always been in the game, but at some point, all of a sudden, the threshold dropped dramatically for what it takes to kind of like trigger this automatic response.
This is one of those crazy things where it's like,
but now it's weaponized, right?
Yeah. So, how would you not recognize that it's going to get weaponized immediately?
Well, because we even talked about this when because we still haven't figured out exactly how to do reporting mechanisms for like level head levels.
We still haven't implemented it because we haven't figured it out.
Yeah, because we know that the moment you give people an outlet to report bad content, they will also use it to take down stuff that they just don't like or just to be a dick.
Well, no, it's more about the people.
Yeah. Well, actually, honestly, it's mostly about being a dick. I think more people are trolls than they are like actively targeting individuals. And that also happens, obviously. Yeah. But the bigger problem is just that there will be people who just report everything because they think it's fun, right? Mm-hmm. And that means that actually there can't be a fully automated consequence to a report unless it also goes the other way. So that and we actually back when I had a different username system and I had implemented a reporting mechanism, the way that it would work is that every time you reported somebody, the value of your future reports went down, right? And this would like reset every month, right? Because the idea was that no one person will see more things that are worth reporting than anybody else statistically, right? So if you're somebody who's like reporting 10 times higher than average, you should basically your report should just have no effect, right? Because that means you're probably
trolling,
but this all has to happen statistically, right? Which means that you don't get to just know ever if a report is real or if a report is somebody being an asshole. And I think probabilistically, it's probably more likely that it's somebody being an asshole.
I think so, yeah.
Because people don't really report stuff, right? And so what do you do then? Is that you need to provide a tool to help people like keep their environment clean, but it will almost entirely be used to make the environment dirtier.
Yeah.
You know? So what do you do? And a lot of our solution
humans, man.
Yeah, a lot of our solution has been
guys are so messy.
is to minimize just how much damage a person can do so that things don't have to be or couldn't be reported because they can't be bad.
Well, the funniest was we finally had one of our testers built a level that actually spelled words in it. And it said like this
said Butterscotch Shenanigans.
This is Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Like huge in cloud block letters.
And we looked at it, we were like, oh no.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, this is really cute, but
people are gonna write
horrible things now.
Which we already knew.
We knew. Yeah. But it did take a long time before someone actually did it, which is interesting.
But it will take literally 0 seconds once it goes live for somebody to write something horrible.
Probably with a dick underlining it.
Yeah.
Because
that's how it works.
Because the people who do both of those things are the same people.
Yeah.
So that, which means that we can't get away with just not having a reporting mechanism.
Yeah, you need one.
And
but we gotta figure out how to not let it be weaponized.
Yeah, and a lot of the problem here, of course, is ideally you can have an automated consequence to reporting, but one where if you are overzealous in the consequences, right, and apply them very liberally so that people who maybe shouldn't have had them applied still do anyway. If you have it be the case that just the amount of damage that it gets done to a person who was falsely accused is just as low as possible, so that we can not have to worry so much about it. Because if we remove the incentive for somebody just to be an asshole by reporting people, all the time, by making the consequences be just like really boring, right? But still have the consequences protect everybody else. Like we need to find that sweet spot, right? So that we don't have to have like manual fucking review and all this kind of stuff that comes out of it. So it's gonna be a thing.
Yeah, it's been at the bottom of our to-do list for a long time because we really don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and the real problem is just going to be that those levels that get to the top are going to get reported.
Yeah, they will.
They're just going to get
people will be like, "This is too hard," and then they report it.
And
or whatever.
So it's not even because previously I was thinking it was as simple as just being like, well, like if we just kind of knock things visibility lower in the listing, if people report it, then that's basically sufficient because it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't hurt you if people don't play your level and level head, right?
But then that means that you can knock somebody else's level below your level.
Yeah.
And now,
not even below your level, because the reality is that there's going to be such a huge gulf between any two levels that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be that there will be people who just don't like the fact that other people are at the top.
Yep.
And they'll just bring those people down because they can, right? And so we have to do something. I just don't know what that's going to look like.
I hope we'll figure it out.
Fucking people. Yeah. So if you're, I think we say something like this every time, but if you're a listener and you have realized that you've done some of these practices in the past, like, man, well, forgive your past self. Just don't fucking do it.
Just don't do it. Yeah. Stop it.
And I get it. Like, it's just one of those things that you like realize this kind of fun, cute thing you could do where you can like harass this other player in this way that doesn't seem to matter that much. But that has a huge impact.
Oh yeah. It
takes a huge impact on the ecosystem that you're.
It takes as much fun for us, or as much time for us to make it fun as it does for us to protect you from other people.
It's easily going to add. We're easily going to have an additional month of development that's just about security and protecting users from each other.
Yes. But that's just, I mean, that was part of the plan.
Yeah, I mean, we know
it's always there.
Just be aware if you see people doing this kind of stuff, because it's also easy to stand kind of idly by while it happens, right? Because you're thinking, you said 5 people have to vote to cause this to happen. That means all fucking 5 of those people did it, right?
They have to be like, it's fine if we abuse this system, and
and so I think there's the problem is there's a level of tolerance for this stuff that is way too high amongst even the people who aren't doing it. That makes it very easy for this stuff to dominate. So, anyway, just try to
call that shit out.
Yeah, call it out. Leave the world better than you found it. One
of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to some questions.
Let's do it.
These questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. The new one. New podcast.bscotch.net.
Just go there.
Go there, ask questions, vote on questions, and we will answer the top voted appropriate question each week. And so from last week, the top voted question was from Offampie Lomhoo.
That's a pretty good one.
Which is a randomly generated Rumpus username from our new system. Which, by the way, you can change your username, but it looks like a lot of people have opted to stick with the weird names that we gave them,
which is a good choice.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah. All right. So Offampie Lomhoo says, so this DevOps handbook says that there is never more than a single bottleneck in a value stream. Stuff piles up behind it and everybody in front is starved. So it seems that somebody should help this poor bottleneck, but the guy with the shovel behind and the starving guy ahead are maybe not equipped to help. Which of the two do you think should help out?
It does not matter, right?
It doesn't matter because neither of them is able to operate properly.
Yeah.
So both should be helping. Actually, honestly, the entire team should be helping.
Yeah. So this is exactly the idea, which is that
swarming.
Yeah. So if you see an error, you see a just some problem in the stream, you basically take your team and you swarm it and you kill it.
You take the value stream offline and then you nuke this problem.
So this is in the Toyota production line. What do they call it? It's the cord.
Or the IDO?
I don't remember.
It starts with an A.
It does start with an A.
Yeah, it starts with an A and it's a cord. It's the idea that like everybody on the line has a little cord that they can pull to stop the entire assembly line.
The whole thing.
And if they see any defect, period, they pull that cord. And they are required to pull the cord. It's not like, just think about maybe trying to help us improve our quality.
Never punished for pulling the cord.
Yeah. And they pull the cord and then everybody, all the executives, everybody, all the plant managers, whatever, they swarm
there's some sort of
down.
like a hierarchy that happens. So it's like first, like just the floor manager comes over and is like, hey, what's going on? And if they can resolve it in there's like a timer. If they can resolve that in 30 seconds, then they just do it. If they can't, then they call in like the next group. And then it keeps on growing until the problem is now solved.
Because they're basically saying like, if there's a problem at this point, then
it's
the problem goes the problem goes upstream.
Yeah,
and we might have to go all the way upstream to the executives at the top to figure out what happened with this one bolt on this car, which is true, So yeah, I mean it's a team effort.
Well, when it comes, the whole point is that when it comes to your bottleneck being a bottleneck, your secondary job, aside from of course doing your piece of work in the value stream, is to figure out how to
relieve
the bottleneck pressure. So that was sort of the case when we talked about last week. I think that the amount of testing we're doing now and trying to make it so that when Seth goes to implement anything, whether it's art or it's some new webhooks or something like that, that it is easy to do and that it also works and that we are as close to 100% certain.
Yeah. So it's important for the people who are then upstream of Seth as our core bottleneck to spend any extra time required. Like any extra time required.
Literally any.
To make sure that he doesn't have to do anything twice and that when he does things, it is as easy as it is possible to do. Yeah.
Because our time is not the limiting factor.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's actually very freeing for the people who are not the bottleneck.
It is.
Like, I can, this is kind of messed up, or let me take a little bit
extra time to make this be good.
And you feel great about it, which is nice.
Yeah. Because what you don't is a scenario where, for example, maybe we got a new web tool or something. And I'm like, all right, time to integrate it. So I branch off of the main off of our development branch. I start implementing this thing. It's broken. And then we go back and Adam's like, shit. And then he's got to figure out how to fix it. And then I go back and I'm thinking, okay,
what the fuck do I
I'll switch back over to the main branch and start working on other stuff. And now I've sort of task switched and now
overhead costs go up.
And then Adam's like, all right, it's fixed. Maybe the next morning or something. I'm like, all right. So then I switch back over and I'm like, where the fuck was I?
And then I got to merge back in all your changes you made on.
Right. So the whole thing is messy and much more prone for having errors and all kinds of stuff.
Versus just knowing, like he pulls it in, like, cool, it's going to work. So makes the changes, gets it all added, puts it back into the main branch, and then they're done.
Yeah. Yep. So it's definitely both people's jobs. But I think the interesting thing about the downstream person, so the person who comes after the bottleneck, who may be, like in the question, starved for the thing that they need to do the job that they're trying to do, is there are usually other tasks you can do outside of that value stream, especially in knowledge work,
that might relieve a bottleneck somewhere else.
Yes. So for example, I do some of the marketing stuff. I do like some other things that are design related that don't actually involve Seth at all. So if it's the case that I'm actually waiting for something from the bottleneck and the bottleneck is a bottleneck and blocked up, then I can just switch on to something else that doesn't add more work back into the stream in any way at any point for this particular person, but is instead, hopping onto some other value stream. So that way you're not creating work that then doubles back and creates more of a problem later on.
Yeah. And I think we knew this intuitively back. So like when we were working on Crashlands, Sam made basically no art for the past at least like 3 months,
3 or 4 months. Yeah. I was working on the campaign. I think I made the bosses.
Yeah. So we made a tool for Sam and Adam. So Adam made a tool for Sam and then later also Adam to build and work on the campaign. And what I had to do was basically build the game side implementation of those tools. But it's still the case to this day that I personally, even though I programmed the game, I personally have not played through all the quests.
Yeah. Yep.
People ask me about quests all the time in the Discord. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't even know where that is. And it's because I was programming up to the last second, trying to fix all the bugs, running the beta test and all that stuff. And that's fine. Yeah. Like that's the proper way.
Well, that was the smart way to do it, because essentially what that meant was that we could build the campaign content without increasing work to the bottleneck.
Yeah.
That was it. Right.
Yep.
And that's the whole point of like what a lot of the work that Adam ends up doing is building these tools that then allow us to not cause problems for the bottleneck or to relieve pressure in some way.
But also the bottleneck position itself, because a big part of this question is just like, well, how do you relieve pressure if nobody involved can like help with the bottleneck work, right? But part of it is the allowance for the person at the bottleneck to take the time to develop additional tooling, right? Because the problem with the bottleneck is that they're always feeling behind, they're always feeling rushed.
They feel like they need to always produce.
They need to always produce, and that actually creates additional problems for the bottleneck, because now the bottleneck is basically piling features on top of features on top of features, which also means piling bugs on top of bugs on top of bugs. And they never get the opportunity to step back and say, how do I just fix some of my processes? And how do I step back and just build some tooling that will speed up all future work? Because when it comes to tooling and process improvements, these things are exponential gains, so that the earlier you start, the more value you get out of them. And conversely, of course, the later you start, the less value you get out of them. So the best time to fix your process is this very moment, or 10 years ago, right? Right. So the next best time is right now. And so as a team, if you recognize this fact and you can then collectively say like, okay, we see that this bottleneck thing is a real issue right now. Like we're not moving stuff through this fast enough because it's just getting stuck here. So let's sit down. Let's take the time consciously to sit down and just talk with the bottleneck about what can you do or can we do to improve these processes and make things move through here faster, right? And then give that person the time. Just be like, okay, if you need a week to build some tooling, that over 6 months will then save 2 weeks, and then over a year we'll save a month and whatever, right? Like, let's fucking take that week and do it.
I mean, we did the same thing for the Levelhead campaign. I basically spent a week. I built the foundational tooling in the first 2 days for Sam to be able to start sort of assembling the campaign. And then he started working on it, giving me some feedback. I'd add a few features or whatever. So I took a week to work on that. And then Sam was just off to the races. And now we have a full suite of campaign tools, which we'll talk about later about what the Levelhead campaign really is. But it's required minimal input from me going forward.
Yeah, because now it's a tool.
Yeah. And I think sitting down as a team and talking to the person who is responsible for, or who is the bottleneck, and giving them the license to do those things is really important, because the psychological pressure that they're under is huge. They feel like they need to instantly respond to everything from the team. They always need to be working on the things that are the most visible, like the things that most clearly change the product.
Yeah, because of course everybody else is like, everything takes so long to go through the bottleneck. Like they want to see results, right?
Yeah. And if you're like, well, I optimized everything, and they're like, what does that mean? Can we see it?
Yeah.
Well, no, only if you're on a bad computer. Well, I'm not. So,
Right. But yeah, I mean, we found that basically sitting together as a team to go through all of our production meetings to where we just say like, here's the shit that needs to get done. Here's the new things we thought of that we realize needs to get done or might need to get done or whatever. And then collectively deciding on what the priorities for those things are and why. And doing that for each person on the team, including the bottleneck, has probably been the most helpful for that because it allows everybody just to be exactly on the same page about what needs to happen and why. And then with very conscious and explicit focus towards reducing entropy to make our future better.
Yeah,
where we basically say like some number of bugs have to be fixed at every cycle, some number of chores that just ought to get done,
clean up,
documentation, refactoring. Just like there's some amount of a significant fraction, like a very significant fraction, like easily 20 to 30% or more of the time for every little sprint that we do is now going into guaranteed just like cleanup and improvement and entropy reduction.
And honestly, like for example, this last sprint that we did was just implementation for me. Like I added a couple new features, a whole bunch of new art, a whole bunch of new audio stuff. And what that means for me is that next sprint, I want to do almost exclusively cleanup, like exclusively bug fixing, exclusively tightening up those systems, making sure that they're integrated properly. And, you know, basically talking to the team about the necessity for those things will save so much time in the future instead of, like you said, so sometimes we would hit a point where this is what happened with Crashlands is we would build features on top of bugs. So you like build a feature that produces 10 bugs. You don't know that they're there and you don't fix them all. And then you add a new feature and then later when you go back, if you've ever had the experience where you go back and look at your code and you're like, this should not have been working.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous sentiment.
And the weird thing is, if you program like that, will happen a lot, like a shocking amount.
Happens. There's no way around it.
Where you realize that the only reason that the game or whatever the thing is that you built is functioning is because of a previous bug,
right? Because something else is broken, and you built this new thing on top of the broken foundation. So that, you know, if you're getting into that situation, you're running into some real trouble. And this is partially why, you know, we haven't been able to update Crashlands as much as we want to. And it's because the code base
is actually
we put it together as fast as possible and got out as fast as possible. And we didn't have any of these practices, and that's just where it ended up.
But yeah, it's as fast as possible in the absence of these practices, because it isn't true that adding these additional practices on top slows development down in the long term.
We just didn't know it.
We just didn't know that. Yeah, we just didn't know how to think about it in that way, because it always feels like taking the time to like document your work and to have a meeting to talk about what should be getting done, and all those things feel like just difficult, shitty overhead that slows you down, or even just like fixing a bug that doesn't seem to matter very much, right? Like all that feels unimportant and like you're not advancing the project. And so it requires just a cultural shift where you just embrace the
like
importance
testing matters.
Testing matters, fixing things matters, and
it's the quality is what
it's the quality. Yeah, and basically where you say like features are of course what in the end what we're making, right? But features are the top of the pyramid, not the bottom, right?
And broken features aren't really doing anybody any favors. You know? Our players are pissed, and then we're not sleeping, and
they're hard as fuck to fix.
The whole world is worse for it. So, all right, let's go to the next question, which comes from Beekie Boppaboop.
That's a very good randomizer. I like that.
Who says Beekie Boppaboop says, nice new page. I'm wondering why you decided to ditch the random names and went back to letting people being able to name themselves.
Which also means this could be a name that this person chose.
Could be.
Extra awesome.
As well as if the podcast page could allow you to see the questions answered in the newest podcast. So we're not going to do that because we actually put it over on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Right?
And then the description gets
the description gets that. So it's not like fully integrated.
So it's kind of, there's some redundancy involved. So for now, so
sorry about that, Beekie Boppaboop.
Yeah. But I'm gonna be storing all the answered questions so that in the future, if we do like fully integrate it into our own thing or whatever, we'll be able to kind of do it in retrospect.
Right. So maybe when we displayed it on our page, we could sort of trim out the last piece of the description.
The RSS feed that we generate that everybody else uses will then like add the questions or whatever.
So that's a possibility. And as far as the random name thing, we realized that people might need or want to name themselves differently depending on the context. So now people have a rumpus. We call it an alias because it's not your username. It's not like what you log in with. It's just what you're known as. It's like a nickname. So now you've got your rumpus alias, which you can change to whatever you want.
So that's the one you see on the website. That's the one you'll see like if you're in Levelhead in the future and there's like 5 people logged in on the same device or whatever, right? Then like you'll see those usernames when you're trying to choose which one.
Yeah, so that's your rumpus. It's your rumpus. We'll call it a nickname. It's your rumpus nickname. But then you might also have a Levelhead nickname, which is going to be the name of your character that you're playing as in Levelhead. Right. So I think maybe another way to think about it is like maybe if you go to the battle.net launcher, you've got a username there, but that's not the name of your character that you play as, in Diablo or whatever. So that's kind of the strategy we're taking with that. And we thought inside of Levelhead, where we are showing your name to potentially millions of people,
including children,
maybe we're not going to let people just type whatever they want in that box. Yeah. And we're going to have some kind of like a weird, goofy name creator system that you can use. But that's sort of curated by us so that you can make all kinds of goofy things like Beekie Boppaboop, but still have a bunch of control over it, right? But in the context of the website, it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, the idea is on the website, like, because we still control where it's being shown to people. So that means anywhere we're going to show it to people, then then I basically have to make a conscious decision. Like, given that people are going to have shitty usernames that will be offensive.
Again, this is one of those
because it's the thing that people will have if we let them choose whatever they want, right? Which is kind of what the origin of all this. Then is it okay for that to happen in this context? Like the podcast page uses your rumpus alias, right? And that's in large part because like people are opting into that system in this very. It's already an explicit podcast.
And
I'm not worried about profanity. But
you're already on the internet.
You're already on the internet. It's like it's more.
All bets are off.
Which isn't to say like if I see something horrible there, I'm going to let it slide, right?
Yeah, we'll still ban it.
We'll still ban that user. We'll still do all those things. But it's also an easier thing to moderate because not as many questions go through, which means and somebody's always reading them anyway.
Yes,
as in one of the staff is right because we either Jen who does all of our podcast listening and like question selection and stuff. So she reads all the questions to choose like which ones are going to go. Or we do sometimes, right? So that means a human being from our studio reads every fucking question.
Reading them anyways.
Reading them anyway, which means that we can just moderate it while we're at it. And the moderation can be very easy because right now we just literally delete stuff. Like you just click a delete button and you're done, right? And if we want to add feature tools, we could do that if it becomes necessary. But in the context of Levelhead, we're not going to see any of those usernames. If everything goes well, there's going to be millions of them, right? So we can't, and there's going to be that small, 1% or whatever, but 1% of a million is.
Well, yeah, it's like if you're
it's 10,000, right?
If you're flipping through the various browsers that Levelhead has, you're going to see
a lot of users,
a shitload of users.
Yeah,
and so like even if it's 0.1%, like. You flip through a couple pages or go to a couple different UIs, it's a very good chance
you're going to see something bad,
absolutely horrifying.
And in that context, we're not willing to allow that to be true because of the target audience for this game, right? If we were making like just a gross as fuck, sexually explicit murder game, then maybe we would allow that, right?
But, let's go.
But in this context,
that's your depravity.
Yeah, but we don't want that there. So a lot of that. So yeah, as I said, this thing we basically split the concept and we just said, okay.
You have different nicknames for different places.
For different places for different purposes. And what I made instead was a generic system that allows us to just generate usernames just on the fly with like where we just specify what the context is, where there's also basic reporting mechanisms for those things, but where the system gets to decide how to interpret those mechanisms. So like the Levelhead usernames have the same reporting tools that the website does. So you can like report a user and whatever, but the website could interpret it differently and apply different consequences. So that way we now have a lot of freedom and flexibility to decide just how bad is it if someone's a dick, right? Because that's really what this comes down to.
It might be the case that it's a single player game and basically their stupid actions don't really affect anything.
Yeah. In which case, like we don't even worry about it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like in Pokemon when you name your rival, if you want to name your rival Fuckface,
which you always do,
right. More power to you. Yeah. You're the only one seeing that. It's sort of your own in joke, whatever. Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's like really horrible stuff that you can also name them, which I just like wish people wouldn't do, but it doesn't impact people outside of yourself, right? And so we don't have to try to police that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So I will say Nintendo in the most recent Pokemon did stop me from naming my rival Fuckface.
No, they did?
So I just had to spell it F-U-K face.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Wow, they didn't see that one coming.
This is the problem is you can't actually fight it. So you just have to decide how to handle the consequences. I still remember we were back when we were talking about this, I don't know, months ago, I guess. We saw a video of that old Spider-Man PlayStation game or something where they apparently had just like a profanity like checker somewhere
Yeah.
in the thing. So if you entered a username, I think it was like for a final score. So I don't know what it was.
Or I think it was for your save.
For your
something.
save, maybe.
Yeah.
So when you entered a name in there, if it contained anything that was deemed offensive by whatever dictionary was in the game, then Spider-Man would come up and just punch it.
randomly turn it into something else.
And randomly turn it into something
Someone
else.
put
Punch
in
it off the
ass.
screen.
Yeah, they put in like ass and they hit enter, and Spider-Man just pops up and punches it, and then it turns into watermelon.
Which on the one hand was like fucking brilliant. We were laughing about this, and Sam was like, "Can we implement something like this?" And I was like, "Well, no, because the problem is this now
it's
becomes
fun.
a game. It's now fun where people are trying to find like now they
What
want to
swear
know
words does Spider-Man
exactly
know?
because they already have a high incentive to try to like figure out what offensive words they can use, right? Because they want to use the most offensive words they can. And so as soon as you make a game out of it, so now it's not only there's a high incentive, but also it's fun and hilarious.
It's hilarious.
Like,
Yeah, the best approach is to make it as mundane and quiet as possible.
Yeah.
So the best would be if you put ass in and hit enter, is then once you hit enter, it changes it to watermelon. And now you're locked
Now
in.
it's
Now it's
saved.
watermelon.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
And
You've done
this is the value of cooldowns, right?
Yeah.
Of making so people can't just change their username.
Well, we also talked about, letting people name themselves whatever they want and then screening it on the other end and then just displaying something completely
And that's
different.
actually how the original system worked. Is
Yeah.
the original system, you name it anything, and then if it got a certain number of reports, then other users would just see a different
It'd
name.
just be masked.
The problem is that people self-report.
And also people would still
People
be
are still going
streaming.
to see it. Yeah.
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 Yep.
So, whatever. All right, we got time for one very quick one, which is from Retro Banana Man NL. Where does the name Bug come from? Is it because it is a small thing that creeps into your game, just like real bugs creep into your house, although not house breaking normally?
I think I heard I don't know if it's a myth.
Yeah, it might be apocryphal. I don't know.
You know what?
Yeah, but
so
the idea, like back in the old vacuum tube days, there was like a moth discovered in one of the tubes that was like there was like some problem that they couldn't figure out. They were just like trying to solve this problem over and over and over again. Couldn't figure out what the fuck was going on. They debugged it. Well, I guess not the time they didn't.
Debug it.
They tried everything.
They just took it apart.
yeah, and then eventually found like in some vacuum tube somewhere there was just a dead moth.
what I heard was the punch card machines,
Mm.
and they're like they put all their stuff in, and then it wasn't working. They're like, "What the fuck?" And they pull it out to go,
There's
look
like
at
a
the code,
bug.
and there was a bug that had gotten like smashed onto someone.
That actually could have
I
happened.
totally could have
Or it
happened.
could also be that a bug sort of got in one of the holes and straddled it so that it didn't look like a hole anymore.
Mhm.
And then now all of a sudden a zero became a one.
You got a hanging Chad situation.
You got to hang it, yeah. Like a hanging Chad bug.
Yeah, so I think it must be something like that because
Yeah.
I think otherwise it actually doesn't make any sense. But the fact that all of this stuff that's digital now used to be physical in some way
Yeah.
means that
We all
probably
have
there
those
were
origins.
literal animals smashed onto cards at some
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
in a way that was
So I think probably based on the question, probably
yeah.
it's some small thing that gets into your system and it's kind of hard to find it and kind of hard to stop it and it seems small
Mhm.
and inconsequential, but it might,
can have
if
huge
it
effects.
ends up in your spaghetti, you're like, well, this is ruined.
Well, I think what's really fun about this, though, is if you think about, a different, like a parallel universe where it was something else that got in there for the first time.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
caused a problem.
Like
So
dust.
they're like, oh, God, I got dust. I got to clear out the
I
dust
gotta
in
do
here.
some dusting.
Yeah.
Actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it works really
Yeah.
well.
Dust be good. Or wrench. They're like, oh, this dude just left a socket wrench inside
Well,
the program
that's
machine.
crazy, right? Because that means that, like, especially if it was truly based off of one moment, right, where
Yeah.
something happened. Because now think about how much of like just the world, like all of our tools that we use have a little bug icon,
Yep.
right? An icon that we made for our game is a
Mhm.
little bug, right? Because it's related to like trying to see if levels are any good
Yep.
or whatever. All that stuff just wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
It would just be something else.
Something else.
Yeah. I do like books and sort of like and sci-fi novels and stuff that do a really it's very rare where they do a good job of that isn't just confusing, where they just replace some concepts and some words. I like that there's this Neil Stephenson book, Anathem, that's long as fuck and nobody will read except for like me apparently, but it's sort of this alternate universe of math, right? And so he takes all these like mathematical theorems and concepts and stuff, but then like somebody else invented them now, right? So it has a different name.
Oh yeah.
And there's like like we know Occam's razor, right? But in this one, it's like somebody's steel yard is like the name of it, right? And so the first time you hear these things, you're like, the fuck is that? And then at some point, it gets used in context, and you're like, oh, it's the same thing. But like then he has a whole history and a story and explanation for why it's called that, which ends up being very fun. And also is just this fun reminder that just everything that we do is just stuff that other people, just specific human beings just invented and we stacked on top of, Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You hear about things like the Dunning-Kruger effect and things like that. It's just named after a couple of folks who thought of it.
Yep.
Could have turned out very differently.
Well, yeah, like in DNA, we refer to like there's the two strands of DNA, right? We refer to as the Watson strand and the Crick strand. right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Those are just some folks.
yeah, there's some
They
people.
were folks that were looking at some microscopes.
Yeah, one of them's super racist, which is then a bummer.
There you go.
How long ago
That's
was
the
that?
racist strand.
Oh, he still is.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be like, oh, it was a long time ago.
No, he still is.
Man, come on, man.
Yeah, well, there's the thing. The whole story, because it's just one of those bummers. I guess that whole story is like there was a woman involved who actually did a whole bunch of the work and got no credit, right? And so now this thing is named after these two dudes. It's like it's already the whole thing about DNA is like kind of sexist already. And then one of the two guys keeps on making these comments about like the races and a genetic component and stuff,
my
right?
God.
So like he actually like lost a whole bunch of his honors just like a few months ago, I think.
Oh, good.
Because he just wouldn't. Everyone's like, dude, you're really old. Like you got this. Can you just not do it? Because then we don't have to deal with it. But he couldn't not. You know,
He couldn't not.
yeah. He looked at the question, can we not?
And he said, I can't not.
No.
I have to ruin everything.
I have to ruin everything.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bart, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, go to podcast.beescotch.net, because over there, we have everything. We got
just
stuff
go
you
to that
want.
one place.
We got merch. We got questions you can ask, questions you can vote on. We got episodes. We got all of the stuff.
Yeah, here's a trick. If you land on that page, scroll up a little, scroll down a little, whatever.
You
You just move around. You're going to find all the things.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Whatever you scroll to or from, you're good.
There's more stuff
You're
there. It's
good.
going to be great.
All right, well, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.